All right, let's get to the other 425 game that matters here. Miami Dolphins at the New York Jets. The Dolphins favored by 1.5 here. If they win, they have a chance, as long as Denver loses at the same time here.
Mm-hmm.
Over-unders 39.5 per FanDuel.
What is our Tua status? Because, he had the hip injury last week, didn't play, it was a late surfacing injury. Does that make sense? He's been limited ahead of this game. But that's a big thing. Like, this also feels like, so obviously Tua's status is huge for this game. Doesn't this also just feel like the game where Aaron Rodgers finally plays like just amazing football, goes out with an absolute bang, and not even to convince the Jets that it's worth one more go around, but just when finally nothing is on the line. It's all been a train wreck. Everyone's mocking them last week because they're going out there with the boombox. Josh Allen's sitting in the corner smiling at it, watching it happen before he stomps them 40-plus points. But the final game of the season with nothing on the line, Rodgers hangs 40.
Balls out at home.
Yeah, looks
off
like
the field
vintage
with the American
MVP
flag.
Rodgers, right?
Yeah.
Ends the game, taking the accolades of the crowd.
I could see it, man. It also could be his last NFL game.
Could be.
Right?
I feel like earlier this season,
I think people are talking about that a lot because they just assume he's coming back.
Well, earlier in the season, I thought that it might be a case where the league was done with him before he was done with the league. He might want to come back, but I was struggling to find spots that would be at all interested in that. The way the sort of back half of the season has gone, though, and the sort of dynamic, teams taking themselves out of draft position, I feel like there's going to be a team like the Raiders from last year who just didn't get one, right? Somebody's going to find themselves in June without an answer at quarterback, and Rodgers is going to be at the end of the phone, and you're going to be like, okay, fine.
Yeah, just to recap, and the reason why we highlighted the Raiders so much, I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Sam, there's 32 NFL teams.
Right.
At that, right?
Correct.
We're the 33rd team.
It's true.
But there's 32 NFL teams.
Yes.
The Raiders were the only team that I would say truly went into the season with a bridge quarterback or a
without an answer at quarterback.
With no long-term answer, right? Yeah. Every other team, even the Titans, had a year two hope for a guy that was drafted round 1 or 2, or they had a veteran, or in Minnesota's case, they had a first-rounder and a bridge, right? But the Raiders were the only team. On paper right now, there's 7 or 8 teams that might be in that boat.
And only theoretically 2 first-round quarterbacks that are going to, fill those spots.
And only a couple. Yeah,
you got the Darnold dynamic, that's an extra one, but there's less quarterbacks than there are quarterback spots, is my point.
To the point where our friend Dan Brugler's talking about Penn State quarterback Drew Aller, who's already said, hey, I'm going back to Penn State, and Dane being like, well, scouts are kind of maybe thinking he could change his mind because he'd be the third surefire first-round pick because some scarcity there as far as QBs go. So, it's an interesting dynamic for Rodgers. But because it's Week 18, I want to at least bring up the point that this could be the last game of his Hall of Fame career. Who knows if he's ready to call it quits. It does seem like he doesn't want to go out on this sour note and has enough confidence that he can come back and play. So
I can't imagine you would want to go out like this. Anybody, And all these guys, generally, the tendency is to stay too long at the fair rather than go home early enough to get out when you're still on top. I think it's very few quarterbacks that are able to sort of correctly gauge when they are on the way out. So I would imagine Rodgers would absolutely want to come back and try and go out on a better note than this. But it's how many teams are going to be interested in that? But it does feel like the kind of game where he might just one last reminder, hey, I can still play.
Yeah, I could see it. I could see that. From a Miami perspective, of course, I think they're better with Tua. He's played pretty well against the Jets his last couple times out after struggling against them earlier on in his career. But Snoop Hundley did play well last week. The back that was is that the first good backup game from Miami? Skylar Thompson did show flashes. I remember Skylar Thompson had a nice little run against Buffalo in the playoff game, but that was also he was throwing the ball to the defense, making big time plays, whatever. Snoop Hundley with one of the cleanest games we've seen from a Mike McDaniel's backup here.
I would say that's the best backup performance Mike McDaniel's gotten out of a quarterback. I mean, Skylar Thompson had a game last year where he looked okay. They've had flashes, but that I think is probably the first sort of decent game they've gotten out of a backup, which is itself a pretty bad
And that was
indictment.
using his legs, you know, just not missing a ton of passes. If he plays like that again, I think Miami's fine. But clearly, they're better with Tua running the show. So that's going to be a big factor here. All right, man, make a pick.
I will as soon as there you go. The Jets. I'm buying into my own narrative that Aaron Rodgers will randomly show up once this season.
You convinced me as well.
There you go.
Give me the Jets here.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.